What's going on, guys? Unknown Player here, and today we're going to be talking about everything that happened today inside of Destiny 2, so all the changes, new stuff, and things to be aware of. The most notable, obviously, is going to be the Dawning, so that in itself has some quests and things to grind, so I'll be going over that and some tips for how to complete that stuff pretty easily. There's also a new exotic that became available today, some helpful info I want to give about engrams and 3 of coins, as well as my general thoughts on the Dawning so far. So let's begin talking about the Dawning event itself. So some of the things you can do and earn and mini quest systems. It is pretty confusing, there's lots of little bits to do, so it can be quite a lot, but essentially the way to think of it in terms of rewards, the main ones and milestones, there are 3 of them. The first one is Welcome to the Dawning. This is one you do only for the very first time you ever do the Dawning, 1 on each character, so 3 times in total. That is what Welcome to the Dawning is, that is how that works. After that, though, you get the Spreading Holiday Cheer, and that's what you do once per week per character, so you can do these 9 times, throughout the 3 weeks of the Dawning, obviously. And there's also today's gift, which, as the name suggests, is a daily milestone. This is going to have you go around to planets and collect planetary materials, also kill enemies, which I'll talk about, make a gift for an NPC. They're going to give you this gift in return, and it seems to be pretty much the main way to grind Dawning engrams. Obviously, you're very capped, but that is a kind of farming route, as opposed to you buying stuff through Eververse. So the schematic or quest that I got was for Shacks, and this required a bunch of the IO planetary materials and also a bunch of servitors to kill. So I went on Nessus for the servitors, basically find the lost sector or public events that have a ton of them, and keep going back and forward and doing those. Eventually, you'll get them done. And then I threw on a ghost shell that helps you detect the IO materials to get the rest of those. Now, some of the other enemies that can also be required from these schematic quests are going to be Minotaurs, Wizards, and Fanatics. Now, most of them tend to be pretty simple. Fanatics is a quite difficult one. They don't spawn very often. What I would recommend if you're trying to get a bunch of Fanatics would be going to either Nessus or IO and doing the Vex public event, the Vex integration one, and Fanatics going to spawn during those. Or you could also do some of these strikes. So during the final boss fights of both Inverted Spire and the Pyramidion, you're going to have some Fanatics spawn for you. Now, speaking of strikes, there are, of course, also a new edition of the snowball piles, which are pretty much everywhere. They're actually all over almost every location in Destiny 2 right now, even the social spaces. You throw them, it's going to stun the enemies and also do a bit of damage. They do have some knockback to them, so you can knock enemies back. And also, it may be a reason to go back to the farm for once, but there are a ton of snowball piles all over the farm, and pretty much always a snowball fight going on. So one of the only reasons to go back to the farm is the massive amount of snowballs. Now, with the Dawning also, of course, includes the new Crucible mode returning from Destiny 1, which is Mayhem. So this is back finally. Gives you a bunch of super energy, melee energy, all your abilities charge super quickly. So it's basically Mayhem, as the name suggests. Not really one to take too seriously. Something pretty strange I noticed in the menu that you may have noticed as well is, of course, the missing node for an additional mode. Obviously, Trials is always at the top here, and Iron Banner is down here in the middle, but this one is going to be for something most likely competitive related. Now, as I covered in a recent video, they did also, in addition to Mayhem, add Rumble and Elimination. Those are inside the game files. We don't know when, Bungie hasn't announced it, but Rumble and Elimination were added in the same patch that Mayhem is, and of course we now have Mayhem. So if one is here, we can assume the other 2 are going to return sometime soon, so we'll have to wait to see what this node turns out to be. So next up, let's talk about a brand new exotic that finally became available today, and it's actually a ghost shell, Sagiras ghost shell. I'm sure a lot of you guys know about this from my video a while ago, but this has finally been found, and as pretty much expected, it is to get all 10 or 11, I guess, of the Prophecy verses from Brother Vance. So the reason it was found today is because this was the reset when you could do more Prophecy verses and finally do all 10 or 11 technically. There is no quest involved, just simply do all 10, and once you complete them, it's going to give you Sagiras Ghost Shell alongside the final forge weapon you end up doing. Now, this is actually the only ghost shell inside the game that is exotic that you don't earn through Bright Engram. So thankfully, a really cool item, probably one of the best looking ghost shells that isn't earned through buying stuff or getting really lucky. It is definitely worth the exotic rarity because it does have a 75-meter radius on Mercury for both caches and resources. So pretty much the best shell you can have for farming stuff on Mercury, even though it is pretty small to patrol. If you don't know, pretty much every single ghost shell in the game has a 30-meter radius, and only 2 exotics have 50. So this one being 75 is the highest and widest radius of any ghost shell in the game. I honestly feel like it's one of the most well-done items in Curse of Osiris. I mean, finding an exotic that you don't have to earn through Bright Engrams, but it's also functional, also looks very cool, and you need a ton of grinding to actually earn this thing. So if you have this right now, anyone you see that has this week has definitely sunk in a lot of time and grinded to earn this thing. Now, there are also some pretty important tips I wanted to give to help some of you still trying to complete the forged weapons and earn those materials. The first one will be to make sure you always have a prophecy in your inventory at all times. Unless it's your last one, you want to get the Saint 14 shotgun or this shell. Don't turn in your 3rd and final prophecy early in the week, because you won't earn any more materials if you don't have a prophecy in your inventory. It's as simple as that. and if you blast through all of them, anytime you play for the remainder of the week, you won't be getting any of those really hard to earn materials. So try and have one in your inventory until you're done with Destiny 2 for the week, until next reset. That way you're constantly getting them in the background, even when you aren't really trying. Also, don't hold on to any of the blue ones if you can use them. So these, if you don't know, stack up to 3 at a maximum. So you can see I've got 3 blossoms right here, and now I'm maxed out. So even if I do get lucky enough, no more are going to drop for me until I make space for some more. So these are shared across all your characters, and they can't be put into the vault. And it's the same for the cultures and amplifiers. Don't be sitting on 3, otherwise it's going to prevent you from getting any more of them. Obviously, if your verse doesn't require any blossoms, then you do have to sit on them like I'm doing right here, but definitely try and avoid it if you can. In terms of the easiest ways in my experiences to farm the cultures, I would say go to Titan and put in a ghost shell that detects chests for you. Titan is very dense and all the materials are very closely packed together, so also this week is a flashpoint. If you've been trying to get more cultures, Titan is the way to go. For the amplifiers, I'd say Crucible is the best. There's no real tricks to it, but it seems to be more time efficient than strikes. But yeah, those are some of my tips for those of you trying to get the forge weapons and on the way to that Sagira ghost shell. So next up, I want to talk again about 3 of coins and how to actually make them work for you. And this is sort of follow-up or actual demonstration of something I mentioned in yesterday's video. But this is to use 3 of coins, of course, when opening milestones with the luminous or powerful engrams. That is mathematically the best place to use them. As I covered yesterday, 3 of coins have a roughly 1 to 5% increase everywhere else, so they really aren't that worth it. But because luminous engrams have a naturally high exotic drop rate, 3 of coins do work very well here. So now there was a reset, I can actually demonstrate this for you in the gameplay, but with 3 of coins active, open up 4 milestone engrams for the luminous or powerful ones, and 3 of them out of the 4 gave me exotic. So obviously it's not a 100% guaranteed chance, but it is going to be your best one. Try and save up all your milestones and do them all under 1 3 of coins and get the most out of them. We're not sure if Bungie do plan on increasing their effectiveness. I think most people would want them to work a bit more effectively for how expensive they are, but Bungie didn't give an impression they would be buffing them, only that they're going to be fixing the bug of them not working in Heroic Strikes, which, by the way, is another bit of advice. They actually don't work right now in Heroic Strikes. Everywhere else, even the normal strikes, they are working as intended though. Now, in terms of my own thoughts on the Dawning event as a whole, even though it's only been here for a day, I did want to give some initial impressions of things I think are good and others that could be improved. Of course, do leave your own thoughts and impressions down below in the comment section as well. I think what's been done for Crucible and Strikes has actually been really good, especially Mayhem, which is probably my favorite mode to play right now in Crucible and definitely my favorite addition in the Dawning. People actually move around here and tend to have a lot of fun and play very carefree, which I think has been missing in Destiny 2 so far. It kind of reminds me of Destiny 1 with the 6v6. People actually ran around and it kind of flowed normally. I think 4v4 does have its benefits, but the biggest problem is everyone tends to huddle together and nobody really ventures out, and it's even more difficult to be a solo player inside Crucible. But team shotting and huddling together 24/7 is kind of the way of Crucible Destiny 2, which is why I love this mode Mayhem so much, because people for the most part aren't afraid to run around. They're just getting into one-on-one gunfights. But it's by far the closest thing to Destiny 1's Crucible, also because there is a ton of ability spam, but I think it's really refreshing. It does seem like Mayhem is going to be going away after Dawning ends in 3 weeks, because the icon is the Dawning picture, and it has always rotated, so expect it to disappear, unfortunately. But hopefully they keep it in rotation, though. I definitely want to see it a lot more often. Now, for strikes, they aren't too different. I do like the snowballs. They are kind of a cool little feature, but they're actually quite useful for stunning enemies and big splash damage. But especially with the forged materials, we now have actual reasons to be grinding strikes and Crucible now, so definitely a big improvement for the end game. I think one of the most crucial improvements for the Dawning could be to earn more of those Dawning engrams in-game as loot as opposed to buying them. As usual, most of the cool stuff inside the Dawning is going to be inside Eververse, not too surprising, but even though there isn't a ton of stuff inside them, it would be nice to have an option to grind as much if you wanted to, if you want to earn more, and not be limited to a few per day, which is the case now. I believe it was the very first Festival of the Lost in Taken King where you could infinitely farm the candy bags and get the treasures as much as you wanted to. It was down to how much you want to pay versus grind. Some people could simply grind a bunch of stuff and get everything in the loot pools without paying a penny, and some people could buy the stuff, so that was a choice. It is worth noting that every single item is going to be sold by Eververse in those guaranteed slots, so the 2 things with the orange stars on them. Those will be sold and kind of rotated. If there's an item you want, you can buy it. It is going to be very expensive, of course, but you can pretty much pick one item, say an exotic ghost shell, wait for it to sell it, and you can just buy it directly instead of waiting through RNG. So definitely a much needed feature. Still would be nice to have more options to get the Dawning engrams. I think a pretty easy solution would be to earn both a Bright engram and a Dawning engram every time you level up, with of course normal XP, and it'll be a pretty nice gesture, especially with all the backlash about Eververse and XP going on recently. So more ways to get the Dawning engrams would definitely be much needed. Obviously, it is also a shame to not see the return of SRL, which has been a tradition every single winter. As I said in a previous video, it is possible they may just do it in a summer event. The Sparrow Racing definitely isn't gone, but it is strange to not have SRL inside a Dawning event. So those have been my tips and a bit of a roundup of everything happening in Destiny 2 today. As always, if you want to support the channel and if you enjoyed the video, then a like rating down below is always much appreciated. Got some more videos on the way, so make sure you are subscribed if you aren't already to stay up to date. And if you want to watch another video from me, you can click the image on screen. But hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next one.